Greetings, friends, and welcome back to Grand Adventure. I'm your host, Mark Guido, and this week we are in the beautiful nature coast of Florida. We're up here in the north central part of the state to explore some of the gorgeous natural attractions that this area has to offer, including paddling the spectacular freshwater springs in this part of the state and visiting Cedar Key. So stay tuned. We paddled Florida's Rainbow River once before, but it's been more than 20 years, and that was our very first experience kayaking. So while traveling through Florida this fall, we wanted to return to the beautiful crystal clear waters of Rainbow Springs once again. We're putting in at the KP Hole County Park in the city of Dunnellon, and we're excited to be connecting with friends for this paddle. Longtime Grand Adventurers may remember Jackie, with whom we spent some time traveling in 2021. She's left her fifth wheel in Central Florida and driven up to Dunnellon to spend the week staying with us. We're also paired up on the Rainbow River with Alice and Larry, the driving force behind the YouTube channel Downsizing Makes Sense. They produce a wonderful RV channel with Alice focused on camping and travel and Larry devoting his attention to improving your RV. We'll put a link right here on the screen to go check out Downsizing Makes Sense. Formerly known as Blue Spring, Rainbow Springs is a first magnitude artesian spring formation in Marion County, near the city of Dunnellon, 100 miles north of Tampa. They're the fourth largest freshwater springs in Florida, producing over 490 million gallons of crystalline water daily at a constant temperature of 72 degrees Fahrenheit to create the Rainbow River, which empties into the Withlacoochee River about 6 miles downstream from the springs. In addition to the springs located at the headwaters, there are many smaller springs that discharge from numerous caves, rock crevices, and sand boils the entire length of the river. The native Seminole called this Weekiwa Creek, and the springs were first developed as a tourist attraction in the 1930s, when guests were treated to underwater views of the springs from a submarine. Rainbow Springs are today the central focal point of Rainbow Springs State Park, which was created when the state of Florida acquired the springs in 1990. The state park first opened in 1995. The entire Rainbow River was designated as a registered natural landmark in 1972, an aquatic preserve in 1986, and an outstanding Florida waterway in 1987. We're first embarking upon a 1.5-mile paddle upstream to the headsprings, before turning around and kayaking another 6 miles to a takeout on the Withlacoochee River. Here at the headsprings, swimming and snorkeling are both popular activities. There's a popular campground within the state park within walking distance of the headsprings. we're being treated to a plethora of wildlife along the river, including not only numerous cormorants, herons, and other birds, but also these delightful river otters. We've found one other type of Florida critter lurking along the shoreline. Should you wish to paddle or float the Rainbow River yourself, numerous outfitters in Dunnellon provide kayak and canoe rentals and upriver shuttles year-round, or inner tubes throughout the summer months. We'll be right back from the Nature Coast with our campground and a visit to Cedar Key right after this brief ad break. For our week along the Nature Coast, we're staying at Goethe Trailhead Ranch, a spacious full hookup RV campground 12 miles northwest of Dunnellon. We've got all the elbow room we need here for $340 per week. Goethe Trailhead Ranch is actually an equestrian campground, but any RVers are welcome with or without horses. And for campers like us without horses, it's good to know that they're boarded at a separate facility right next door, but not allowed within the campground. It's the best of both worlds for horse folks and non-horse folks alike. And riders have miles and miles of trails to explore beginning right across the street within Goethe State Forest. I've long been intrigued by maps depicting Cedar Key as one of the few places accessing the Gulf of Mexico in Florida's Big Bend. Our campground is an easy 40-mile drive away, so it was time to experience Cedar Key for ourselves. And we're positively charmed. Cedar Key has now sprung to the top of our list of favorite Florida locations, and we've vowed to spend a full week here the next time we return to the area. The Cedar Keys are a tiny cluster of islands that are delightfully low-key, if you'll pardon the pun, given their location right on Florida's Gulf Coast. The population is only 700, barely more than lived here 150 years ago, and there's nothing much larger for many miles in any direction. Cedar Key nevertheless has many of the trappings you'd expect to find in a coastal fishing town, including a compact harbor area with a small collection of lively bars and restaurants. The Cedar Keys were a pivotal Army location during the First and Second Seminole Wars in the 1820s and 1830s, respectively. The town was actually platted in 1859 on what is called Way Key, and the historic Island Hotel was formerly the Parsons and Hales General Store, which opened for business that year. Cedar Key became an important port, shipping lumber and naval stores harvested on the mainland. By 1860, Cedar Key became the western terminus of the Florida Railroad, connecting it to Fernandina Beach on the east coast of Florida. Cedar Key at first prospered, even though mosquito-borne malaria was prevalent. But the arrival of the railroad in Tampa in 1886 and a Category 3 hurricane in 1896 that brought with it a 10-foot storm surge that killed 100 people cemented Cedar Key's economic decline. At the start of the 20th century, fishing, sponge hooking, and oystering had become the major industries. But by around 1909, the oyster beds were exhausted. Tourism joined fishing as an economic driver here in the 1950s. After a statewide ban on large-scale gillnet fishing went into effect in 1995, a government retraining program helped many local fishermen begin farming clams in the shallow waters. Today, Cedar Key is one of the nation's largest producers of hard-shell clams. Right in the middle of our week on the Nature Coast, I'm being sent on a business trip to Waco. RV life isn't always rainbows and puppy kisses when you're working at the same time. That's lousy for me, but good for you that thanks to the magic of video, we'll bring you right back to the Nature Coast to kayak out to an uninhabited island containing a rare Florida ghost town right after a brief advertising message. Jackie and I can't resist the opportunity to kayak out to and around Atsena Otie Key, a rare Florida ghost town. A half-mile offshore of what's now the town of Cedar Key, Atsena Otie Key was initially named Depot Key, as it once had a Florida militia depot located there. Construction began on a U.S. Army hospital here in 1840, but a 27-foot hurricane storm surge in 1842 destroyed much of the island and was abandoned by the Army thereafter. Augustus Steele, the U.S. Customs House officer for Hillsborough County, Florida, and postmaster for Tampa Bay, received a homesteading permit for Depot Key, which he renamed Atsena Otie Key, the reasons for which and the meaning of the name both still unknown today. In 1843, he bought the remaining buildings on the island and built some cottages for wealthy guests. In 1844, he became the collector of customs for the port of Cedar Key as well as for Tampa. A post office named Cedar Key was established on Atsena Otie Key in 1845. In 1865, the Eberhard Faber Company built a lumber mill on Atsena Otie Key to supply its pencil factory in New Jersey. However, the railroad terminal confirmed Waikie's advantage. The 1896 hurricane wiped out most of the remaining eastern red cedar trees that the pencil mill was harvesting, as well as the pencil mill itself and most of the island's residences. The town of Cedar Key was rebuilt on the more protected Waikii, and Atsena Otie Key is now uninhabited. The last wooden house still standing on the island was torn down in the 1940s, and the lumber was taken to Cedar Key. President Herbert Hoover established the Cedar Keys National Wildlife Refuge in 1929 by naming 3 of the islands as a breeding ground for colonial birds. Atsena Otie Key has since been added to the refuge. Those brickworks along the shoreline are all that remains of the Eberhard Faber pencil mill on the island. We're rounding the southwestern point of the island, now staring across the open expanse of the Gulf of Mexico. These are black mangrove trees, their finger roots poking out of the sand. Continuing around the island, the mangroves are gradually replaced by tall, longleaf pines. We've nearly completed our circumnavigation of Atsena Otie Key. The water is exceedingly shallow in many spots here along the island's northern shoreline, and the oyster beds lining the sea bottom are exceedingly sharp. Don't ask me how I know. Due to its status as a national wildlife refuge, much of Atsena Otie Key is off limits to human visitation. However, we are able to land at the island's northwest corner and walk about a mile to find a remnant of the island's former habitation. We're carefully watching where we're stepping, for all of the islands off Cedar Key have unusually healthy populations of cottonmouth moccasins. Here along the trail is a former windmill, further evidence of the island's former habitation. This is the town's original cemetery on Atsena Otie Key. Conspicuously, all of the headstones date prior to 1896, the year that the Cedar Keys hurricane destroyed the island. From the inscriptions and dates on the tombstones, it's obvious that most of those buried here lived brief, harsh lives. After arriving back in Cedar Key, Jackie and I have concluded that we're now entitled to be rewarded for our efforts with something cold, rum-laden, fruity, and brightly colored. So we truly hope that you've enjoyed visiting the Nature Coast of Florida with us. We're going to get packed up to head on off to Panama City Beach. So if you're not yet a grand adventurer, this is the perfect time for you to go smash that little red subscribe button right down there in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. And ring that notification bell to be sure that you never miss a grand adventure that we air every Wednesday evening. We'd be honored if you shared the channel with your friends, family, and on social media. Understand, it is extremely important to us that if you like this episode, please be sure to give us a big thumbs up down below. And while you're down below, you'll find the comments section where we'd love to hear from you after each grand adventure. So until next week from Panama City Beach, please remember, life is nothing but a grand adventure. We'll see you then.